really, no, really fans. It's David Guggenheim here with you today with a bonus edition of Really, No, Really. Now, in the most recent edition of the show, we had Dr. Ryan Sultan, the assistant professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia University. Now, he came on to talk about people behaving badly, the Karens at the pool, or the people going crazy on airplanes, right? And so we were having that discussion. But during the taping, Peter admitted that he was coming cold turkey off of the use of marijuana that had sort of gotten out of hand since COVID and all those sorts of things, and using it legally in California. So much so that when he went off of it, he was having a hard time. Well, thankfully for us, Dr. Sultan is an expert in the areas of anxiety, mood disorders, depression, ADHD, and substance abuse, ketamine, and cannabis use. So he was the perfect person to talk to the research, the new extensive research showing issues with heart, issues with parts of the brain actually shrinking with extended cannabis use. So it wasn't really part of the behaving badly type of show that we were doing for you, but we felt that it was an important, helpful conversation that we wanted to share with you. So without further ado, let's go to Jason and Peter for Really, No, Really.
Really? No, really. Really? No, really. Really?
But I wanted to ask you something really important. We had opened this by talking about cannabis, and I'm very candid about my cannabis use, that it got really out of hand during COVID.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I'm not proud.
A lot of people's did.
Well, and I didn't even realize it started
Yep.
for bed.
Yep.
The story I told myself was I needed to go to sleep because
Yep.
I don't sleep well, and then I needed to eat dinner, and I needed to get up, and I needed
Yep.
this because my kids are going through this stuff. You specialize in cannabis use, ADHD, and especially with antipsychotic treatment in teens. If you had to give us an umbrella, because as I said to start this, the cannabis use, they just found out with one of the bigger tests ever that they've done that increases the risk of stroke tremendously and lung disease, et cetera. So I threw it out, and this is day 3, and I can feel it. I can feel that I'm a different guy. I'm a bit scattered, and
Yep.
I'm coming down.
Yep. Your dopamine's down.
I also noticed that when I was using it, the more and more I used it, the more I got edgy, the more I got shaky, and I knew that rationally, but I didn't stop. So if you can address that.
So many things going on with cannabis right now. One of the main things that has come up is that we had this pendulum shift from cannabis is the worst thing ever to it's a totally natural, benign panacea. Like both of those things are wrong, actually, right? Like those are extreme examples. And so there's this idea that cannabis has no negative side effects, which is just incorrect. Another thing that's important about cannabis is the cannabis that you have access to now is not the cannabis you had access to when you were a teenager. It is substantially stronger by design. It is substantially stronger than the stuff that you had before. And when you think about like whenever we've done that before, right? Like morphine versus fentanyl, like fentanyl is like 100 times stronger than morphine. Like, and we didn't have an opioid crisis when we only had fentanyl, when we only had morphine, right? Like it was when we created this much stronger version. So like the cannabis of today, it's you got natural cannabinoids in your body that we all just have that are binding to the cannabinoid receptors, and like the weed of probably my parents' generation, you put a little bit in a joint, you take one hit, like it would bind to that, it would feel nice. The weed now is much stronger. It is binding to that receptor and is clinging onto it so much. And then now that it's binding to it so much, your body says, oh, I don't need as many cannabinoid receptors. So they make less cannabinoid receptors. We can see that on a functional MRI, that you have a reduction in the cannabinoid receptors. So now when you stop, you feel awful. You feel awful because there isn't enough naturally circulating cannabinoids to compensate, and you don't have the receptors that you had before because it's downregulated. And the more potent is, the stronger it is, the more that phenomenon is going to happen.
So when you talk about it, because I had done this on the radio years ago,
which is why you have this rebound anxiety, by the way.
And how long does that last, by the way?
The fMRI data shows that you on a scan it looks pretty much normal after about 30 days of no use.
You're almost there, Pete.
No, I'm not. But I got pushback. Anytime I talk about this on radio, and this was before I had the use that I do now, you get the call from every stone in the world going, that's because you're doing it wrong. You got the wrong dude. You got the wrong strain.
Yep.
Are you using, what are you using? Are you, oh, hold on.
That's my wife. She heard us talking about us.
What's amazing is that's Britain.
And I have it on Do Not Disturb,
That's Britain
airplane
time.
mode.
Britain time.
Good Lord. My wife heard us talking about weed, and that's why she doesn't want you.
Wow. Big Ben is what you chose for.
Those are wedding bells.
It sounds like Big Ben. That's a
wedding bell. Bang, 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 bang in a
For
church
Harry,
when you
for
come out.
Harry and
in
Meghan,
a
that's
church,
a wedding
which I
bell.
didn't get married in.
So the point being, I always got the pushback. People yelling. Everybody who does pot goes, you're doing it wrong. You got the wrong kind of pot. You had to this and that. How do you even answer that? Because people on pot that are using a lot of it are going to be really resistant because it, like I said, if you said it's 30 days of this, I'm in because I don't want to have a stroke. But how do you tell somebody 30 years old who's taking it because they're convinced that it helps with their ADHD or it's helping with whatever they have?
And it might help with their ADHD. There's a little bit of data that some that strains, and we don't have this down right, meaning we can't replicate it in a medical way, that it might do that. So I want to validate for them. It does reduce anxiety and it does improve mood symptoms. So everyone who says, hey, like, no, it actually made me feel better, they're right. But the thing that they need to think about is the flip side of it, particularly with the anxiety and depression stuff, which is that, you know, the more you're using it, it's probably making that condition worse for you.
Oh,
actually,
yeah, I could feel it.
And you don't realize that. You don't realize it. And the cannabis is sneaky. It's really sneaky. It plays a trick on you. You're using it more and more. Eventually, you get to a point where if you need it just to feel normal, and to just sort of function. I spent a lot of time talking with people about that, and you know, one of the ways I start with is just like let's just write down how often and like how much we think we're using. Like, you don't have to change anything. Like, just write it down, just record it. Like, no judgments. Like, because most of the time when we do that, it turns out it's more than we thought it was, right? Yeah. And same thing with drinking. You ask anyone how much they drink, almost everyone is going to underestimate how much
And the
they
amazing
drink.
thing about the phenomenon, as aware of it as I was, I'd be in my day and I'd be going, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good today. Everything's going well. I'm doing whatever. And I go, but I'm still, and I know what it's doing to me, but I'm still going to do it.
So my
I'm still going to
version
do it.
of that, it was, and probably always will be, sugar. And I realized it when I was in an acting class, and my acting teacher said, you go out for an audition and you do a bad job, what do? I go get a Snickers bar. Right. Now you go out for the audition, you do a great job. What do? I go out for Snickers bar. He goes, well, there you go. Yeah.
But this thing scared me. I mean, it scared. This report was a pretty valid report. And again, I'm sure people are going to listen.
And there are other aspects of it. So that one is in some ways not surprising because the inhalation of any kind of smoke damage is going to damage your lungs, right? I mean, this is like you are burning something, right, okay? Right. Like so yep. Like, you know, just like if you were in a fire, that wouldn't be good for you either. The other thing that I worry actually more about, because the lung thing is the obvious thing to be worried about. The thing that I worry about is all this data that we have on the changes in the structure of your brain. That's what I worry about. So in kids, which by the way is under 25, okay? Under 25 is your brain is developing to at least till 25. You have ADHD, it's probably even later than that. There's evidence of structural changes. And then in long-term cannabis users, and you know, in Scandinavian countries, they, you know, their socialized system, they monitor everyone, they have records on everyone. So they're able to look at people for many years. Cannabis users, their hippocampus is smaller. Your hippocampus is a big memory center. And one of the most acute effects of cannabis is the effect on memory. I mean, anyone who smokes pot is aware of this. And so like, what does that mean? I actually don't know the answer, right? Like I don't know the answer. No one has the answer on that yet, but there's a lot of concerns on it.
But then you get the superstars, like I'm assuming, based on what they themselves have said, superstars like Snoop Dogg or Seth Rogen, who are able to. I mean, they seem to be completely functional. In fact, Seth Rogen's probably doing 100 times more in a day than I'm capable of doing. And
You know, the thing with mind altering substances, and this was true for alcohol too, is that we all don't respond the same to them.
Yeah.
And also the situation that we're in, the life we're in, the environment we're in is going to affect that too. And yes, there are people that seem to be really heavy cannabis users, and there does not appear to be any negative consequences for them, but that's not going to be everyone.
May I wrap this episode up by saying, in the words of your mother, don't worry so much about Snoop Dogg. Worry about you. Your mother. We should use her to wrap every episode. Don't worry about Seth Rogen.
If Seth Rogen jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Right.
Dr. Ryan Sultan, thank you. Thanks for coming in.